People sometimes ask me how I manage to handle the heat while I'm filming in my costume. The answer is fairly simple. I used to have air conditioning in the old place, so during the summer and stuff I would just turn the AC down to like 17 Celsius, obviously. These days I don't have air conditioning, but I do have a basement, and luckily I don't live in a very hot country. And the mask, as hot as it looks, is actually fairly thin. It's 2 layers, but they're both pretty thin layers. Most of the time it's okay. I do get hot. I have to run the fan full blast while I'm filming, especially to counteract the heat of the lights. And typically what I do in the winter is I take advantage of the cold. I turn the heat off in the house a few hours before I film. A few minutes before I film, I open up the little tiny basement windows and let the winter air in. And in the summer, I mean, I've only filmed here one summer, but last summer, it really just wasn't that hot of a summer. And I just filmed, a little later at night when some of the heat's starting to dissipate, when I can open up some windows and try to get some of the heat out. But that has not been the case this June. At least not in around the last third of the month where I normally film. It has been very much unusually hot in this house, and just around here in general, and it keeps getting hotter. My basement is normally somewhat cool. Even in the summer, it's usually at least not extremely hot, but it's not cool now. I've tried to find an opportunity to actually get my filming done without either dying or more likely just being so hot and tired and miserable that I have no rhythm and can't actually do my head bobbing properly. I tried it and it just does not work. Maybe I just lack the constitution to deal with the heat. In fact, I know I do. So as much as I'd like to keep up my very long streak at this point of filmed videos, I'm kinda giving up here. Even just sitting here in my basement recording this, I feel like I'm turning into a puddle. So yeah, what I'm gonna do is for the 4 videos for June, that's this one and 3 more after it. Those are the ones made in June, put on Patreon in June, but they'll be public in July. I'm just gonna accept that they're not gonna get filmed. And hopefully July brings me something a little less extreme. Like I say, last year I actually managed to film in the summer, so it's not unlikely. At this point, honestly, I'm tempted to just go to the extreme myself and get AC installed in the house, but that's probably going to cost thousands of dollars and I just don't have it right now, so that's not going to happen. Maybe I can save up for a few months and then hopefully next year in the spring do it so I don't have to film next summer without it. We'll see. So anyway, as far as the video, which is probably what you clicked on this for, and sorry for rambling on and scaring off most of the audience, I'm doing something I found in a random YouTube search that seems kinda stupid and light, which is good for hot weather, I think. So here's, at this point, I don't even remember what it was. But me, in 10 seconds from now, will definitely know, and be on the ball making awesome points about it. I'm sure. Don't you worry.
Hello and welcome to another teaching from 119 Ministries.
Oh, hello, Tim Barnett.
Our ministry believes that the whole Bible is true and directly applicable to our lives today.
Wait, 119 Ministries? That's not Stand to Reason Ministries. What are you trying to pull, Tim?
It is often said God cannot exist because there is too much evil and suffering in the world.
Oh no, is this another problem of evil thing? Come on. How many times can I address the same stupid garbage? Whatever, we'll get to that later. First, hey, a control room, can you get Tim Barnett up on the screen? I just want to make sure that's him. Yeah.
This is a powerful objection to the existence of God.
Wait, what is again? I got distracted. I mean, you look like Tim, you sound like Tim, you got the same incredibly condescending tone, the beard is weird. Take off your hat, let me see that dome.
Because the problem of evil and suffering is not merely an academic or theoretical question. It's a reality that affects all of us in a deeply personal way.
What are you talking about? The problem of evil, yeah, that's an academic or theoretical question. It's a philosophical objection pointing out contradictions between the stated properties of a thing. What do you mean it affects all of our lives? Evil, you could say, affects people's lives, not the problem of evil. Not the same thing.
Perhaps no experience is more painful or devastating than losing a loved one to death. And yet, this is a difficult road most of us find ourselves having to navigate at times in our lives.
Bro, can you stop with the concerned tone? We're not having a conversation here about death or evil or suffering or anything like that. We're not having a group therapy session here for people who've lost loved ones. We're talking about an argument that your God is inconsistent with itself as you present it. That's the argument. That's what we're here for. Why are we even pretending like the emotional impact of bad stuff happening is relevant here? Well, my guess is, based on prior experience with other people, that probably the goal is to paint people who raise this objection as just having an emotional, visceral response, not really thinking about it, but just emotionally not liking the ideas that you present and rejecting them out of hand. Am I right? I guess we'll find out.
When we lose someone we love, like a child or friend or our spouse, and we're faced with that paralyzing grief, it's hard not to be angry with God or to question whether he even exists.
Yeah, exactly. There it is. That was fast. Tell you what, I'm not grieving. It's been a few months since anyone in my family died, and I was already doing this for like 9 years before that. I never rejected God at all. The door's still open for the evidence, it's just not there. But even so, the problem of evil applies equally well regardless. This is not just some emotional response theists come up with when they're sad and angry and looking for someone to blame, so they blame God. It's also a millennia-old philosophical argument that applies to specific deities with specific properties. It's an intellectual question that deserves an intellectual response. And some people do that. Some people actually try to argue the point intellectually, and great. With those people who understand that they're not dealing with just an emotional, unreasonable, grief-stricken wail, it's possible to actually have a discussion. It's possible for them to actually get to a point that maybe is respectable as a response, even if you don't agree with it, even if you can poke holes in it. But starting off a video about the philosophical problem of evil like this shows that you've missed the point already, and it makes you sound like a condescending ass.
Another type of suffering we experience is sickness and disease. Even if we have not had to deal with it ourselves, we likely know people who live with chronic pain. Often we're moved to ask, why must this person live in pain? Why doesn't God just heal them?
Oh, that's not the question. Look, if things are already at the point where you have to ask, why doesn't God fix this? Why doesn't God heal this person? You're already far past the point where the problem of evil applies. If you define sickness and suffering and so forth as evils, then by that definition, healing would never be necessary in a world lacking evil, because there would never be anything to heal in the first place.
Additionally, we've all witnessed the suffering of others due to injustice and oppression, abortion, sex trafficking, racism, rape, child abuse.
Yes, okay, we understand the concept that bad stuff happens. Who are you explaining this to?
As we observe the suffering in the world due to the sheer evil residing in the hearts of mankind, we're often left in a state of complete bewilderment.
Are we going to get to the point at any point here?
Many of us have friends or acquaintances that have said they cannot believe in God because of the evil and suffering in the world.
You know what? Now that you say that, I'm not sure anyone's ever said that to me in my entire life. A lot of people have told me people say that. I've seen it play out as a trope in movies a bunch, but I've never actually heard anyone say that. Maybe it's a thing that's more common among Christians? Like something bad happens and they start wondering why this God that they love so much and think so highly of would let it happen, and that kind of sits there in their mind, and eventually they go, I'm not sure I can believe in this God anymore. Maybe. I mean, I've never been religious. I've never even been to church, so who knows, I guess. But among my mostly atheist circles, I've never heard anyone give that as their reason why they don't believe. Not that I remember, at least. Now, I know that doesn't actually mean much. That's just my anecdotal experience. It's weird because it's stated as this given, right? Like there's going to be a bunch of people with this opinion who reject belief in God because of this. I just wonder how common of a reason this actually is.
Maybe you felt that way yourself.
Felt or thought? See, again, we're talking about two different things, right? We're talking about a feeling of grief and anger and blame causing you to get upset with the God that you think put your friend through the sickness or you through the sickness or whatever. And you go, I'm just not going to believe in you because you make people sick. How could you allow all this bad stuff, right? Not even necessarily a terrible point, but clearly emotionally driven, not intellectually driven. And then on the other hand, you have something similar but distinct, which is thinking that a God that's claimed to be omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, in a world claimed to have objective moral values, good and evil, which also contains evil, has some contradictions. Right? This is the kind of thing you can sit down with your cup of coffee in the morning and just sort of idly ponder with no emotionality whatsoever. And that's why I ask, do you mean you might have felt this way, or do you mean you might have thought this way?
The pain we've seen and experienced, even as believers, may make us struggle to believe that God is involved or even cares.
That's an interesting statement. Why are you struggling to believe something? I don't struggle to believe anything. People who think they have good reasons for what they believe don't have to struggle to believe anything because their goal is not to believe a specific thing. Their goal is to follow what the evidence would compel them to believe. Is there a good argument for something? Then that's what I believe. I don't even feel like I have much choice in the matter. You made an argument, maybe based on physical evidence, maybe not. Either way, I found it compelling, and now I agree with you. That's how beliefs work, or how they're supposed to work. No struggle involved. There may be a struggle to, for example, understand the evidence or understand the argument, but once you do, there's no struggle. You either accept it or you reject it. If at that point you still have to struggle to believe something because you feel like you're just supposed to, drop it. You should not be deciding what you believe and then looking for reasons to believe it. You should already have had compelling reasons, and that's why you believe it. If that's not the case, toss it in the garbage because it's junk.
How can a God who supposedly loves people allow such evil and suffering to continue?
I don't know. Is it like a BDSM thing, maybe?
This is an important question we wrestle with. Thankfully, the Bible is not silent on this issue. In this teaching, we will answer 4 questions relating to the problem of evil and suffering.
Imagine how arrogant you have to be to think about yourself in this way. In this teaching, I'm going to teach you the answers to the problem of evil, the problem that's been debated for how many thousands of years now? You know, the title of this video is Answering Atheists, Making Sense of Evil and Suffering, which is an okay title. Someone made a point. You're answering the point. You're in an argument with that person. You're answering atheists. I'm answering Christians. And that's the way to approach these things, right? I mean, when I make these videos, I'm not your goddamn teacher. Don't come here looking for some kind of a lesson, for some kind of intellectual leader to instruct you in the truth. I'm a guy on the internet having arguments with other people on the internet. When I say something as if it's a fact, it's pretty clear, I think, from my presentation that it's just my opinion, even so. And I would never be so full of myself as to call my videos teachings, because that would demonstrate that I'm an ass.
Number 1, does the reality of evil and suffering disprove God's existence?
No, of course not. Just specific conceptions of God. At least if you take the problem of evil at face value and look at it from within a worldview where good and evil are objective.
Number 2, why do bad things happen to good people?
Oh, there are no good people. Something, something sin, something, something Eve.
Number 3, what are God's solutions to evil and suffering?
Well, there was a big-ass flood, and then I think that's it.
And number 4, how are we to respond to the evil and suffering in our world?
Well, I don't know, but I'm sure you're going to tell us what we are to do, O Lord.
The answers given in this teaching are by no means a full treatment of the issue. Believers have been struggling with this for thousands of years. Entire books have been written on the topic.
But in this teaching, you're going to tell us the answers.
However, having a basic understanding of how to answer these questions will help us to reconcile the reality of evil and suffering with the goodness of God.
Wait, why is that the goal? That goes right back to the struggling to believe thing. Why is it never about finding out if there's any validity to the argument, deciding whether there really is any impact on the consistency of the God you believe in? It's always about finding some way to keep on believing, finding some way to reconcile everything. Oh, whatever.
Does the reality of evil and suffering disprove God's existence? A common objection you'll hear from atheists might go something like this. There cannot be a God because there's too much evil and suffering in the world.
Okay, if someone actually made that argument to you exactly as stated there, that's one of the worst atheist arguments I've ever heard. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Emotionally, this is a powerful objection.
How? I mean, why am I emotionally assuming that a God cares about evil or suffering? I mean, based on the overall Christian story, it in fact seems to me that he caused it. If you have a God that approves of evil, causes evil, that's perfectly consistent with a world full of evil and suffering. What's the problem, emotionally, intellectually, or otherwise?
From an emotional standpoint, it's difficult to believe that a loving, all-powerful God allows a child to die of cancer or a young woman to be raped and murdered.
from an emotional standpoint. Yeah, so I think I was right. That stuff at the start really was meant to kind of paint this objection as an emotional objection, so it's more easily dismissed. I have to wonder though, do you honestly think that the thousands of years worth of philosophers calmly pointing out to you the internal conflicts within your belief system were just saying that for no reason other than bad stuff made them feel a little sad? I guess some of them might have, but all of them? I mean, I can tell you right now, and you're probably not going to believe me, but when I raise these kinds of objections, it's not because I'm emotionally invested in it. I mean, I don't really care at all. As far as I'm concerned, we could swap out God with dragon, and it'd be exactly as emotionally important to me. Right, we're talking about something that, in my opinion, has no effect on the world because it doesn't exist. It has no obligation to behave a certain way. It's the bad guy in a book. The only emotional response I really have to this is, what's the emotional equivalent of a facepalm?
However, ironically, the reality of evil and suffering makes more sense with a theistic worldview than with an atheistic worldview.
Gonna stop you right there because I think I know what you're gonna say. Maybe you really are Tim Barnett. I think you're gonna say if there's no God, there's no objective morality, no good and evil, and so the entire objection makes no sense. I'm willing to go all in on that.
That is to say, theism, biblical Christianity in particular, gives us the best philosophical framework for understanding why evil and suffering exist and how we can address them.
Oh boy, are you even going to address the actual problem of evil argument at all? It's looking grim.
So, how does the reality of evil and suffering make more sense with a theistic worldview?
Actually, based on the last clip, I'm more curious how the reality of evil and suffering make more sense with a biblical Christian worldview in particular. I mean, lots of religions have objective good and evil. I kind of doubt if we're going to get an answer here.
Because the entire concept of evil doesn't even mean anything if there is no God.
I knew it! I called it! I knew it before you said it, I swear. It wasn't exactly a stretch. Tim Barnett did it, Wretched Guy did it. Did that Messenger kid do it? I don't remember. It's honestly more surprising if they don't do this. Okay, how can I explain this more simply than I already have in other videos? Let me think. Okay, someone comes up to you and says, listen, here are two of your beliefs. There is a conflict between these two beliefs. And then they explain the conflict. And you say, no, idiot. There's no conflict between those two of my beliefs because you don't believe them. Do you understand the problem here?
If atheism is true, there can be no good and evil.
I would beg to differ. I think it's really a matter of definition. Of course, if we just take your definition, which is entirely based on God, then you're right. That kind of good and evil obviously can't exist with atheism. But that's basically just a statement that your worldview and my worldview differ in their view of the world, which is truly a revolutionary statement. Anyway, since this is entirely irrelevant because we're talking about a contradiction within your worldview, not between your worldview and mine, why are you bringing this up? It means absolutely nothing in this conversation.
On the atheistic view, humans have no objective moral worth. We're just animals. What we call morality is merely an evolutionary adaptation that developed as an aid to survival.
Irrelevancies, irrelevancies, irrelevancies. Fast forward, get to the point.
Moreover, all life in our universe as we know it will ultimately end in nothingness anyway, so nothing really matters in the grand scheme of things. Least of all, the subjective notions of right and wrong that emerged among us highly evolved apes.
But all of us, even atheists, acknowledge that good and evil aren't just personal preferences.
Well, I know. You just said that morality is an evolutionary adaptation that developed as an aid to survival. If so, that's not just personal preference, is it? You said that as if you contradicted the other part, but instead you reinforced the other part. But seriously, why are we off on a tangent about atheist morality here? There's no problem of evil of atheism. We don't propose an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God, and a good fair chunk of us also don't believe in objective good and evil. So the problem does not apply to us. Why are we talking about us? You might as well start rambling about the Hindus.
The entire objection against God's existence on the basis of evil rests on the assumption that some things are evil.
Yes, within the Christian worldview, some things are objectively evil. That's the Christian worldview. And that's where the objection about the inconsistency of God within the Christian worldview comes from. If you didn't believe that good and evil were real objective things, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. There would be no argument. I honestly don't understand why I have to explain this so often. Why do people who try to rebut the problem of evil argument so often approach it from this direction? Oh, you're making an argument about Christian ideas? Let me ramble for a while about atheism. That should refute it somehow. Based on the stuff I've seen, I would say that this is like 75% plus of the responses to this argument. And it's so obvious that they're missing the point that I just can't understand how they don't realize it. Budget Tim Barnett, are you not even listening to yourself? Anyway, as you can probably tell, I'm getting a little frustrated here, so I'm going to take a break and come back next week. Thank you all for watching. Please, before you go, give the video a like and click subscribe. Huge thanks to all of my supporters on Patreon, Subscribestar, PayPal, all the other ones. People on the email list get videos one day early. Highly recommend. list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.